have a couple of practical issues to highlight. We have no fire drill planned tonight, so if there is a fire alarm, please make your way out of the building in a calm and orderly fashion as guided by staff. People with mobility issues should gather in the foyer on the left-hand side as you leave the chamber, near to the balustrade, where assistance will be provided. Toilets are at the far end of the corridors, either side of the chamber, ladies to the left as you leave and gents to the right. May I ask that if you need to leave and return to the council chamber during the meeting, you ensure that the doors do not slam after you. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. Apologies have been received from councillors Ackroyd, Francis, Price and Worley. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make on any items on the agenda? We have received 3 public questions. The first is from Mr. Gareth Lewis. Mr. Lewis, would you please ask your question?
In 2017, the council spent £200,000 on the City Hall clock tower and clock refurbishment. The gold gilt is now peeling from the numeral points. As I now understand, this situation that caused the failure of the gilding was due to a rushed and low quality job by the contractor at the time. To my knowledge, gilding is a skilled and meticulous and time-consuming occupation. Is the cost of this now necessary repair going to be covered by a guarantee or warranty by the original contractor, or are the long-suffering council taxpayers going to be lumbered with yet another cost?
Councillor Kendrick, will you please give your reply?
Thank you for your question. The work undertaken in 2017 was part of a wider package of work. It's primarily focused on the repair to the large panels, which are large copper sections of metal projecting from each of the corners of the tower, as well as structural repairs to the tower itself. These repairs were successful and an example of proactive management of our assets. Given budget availability at the time, gilding of the clock faces was added to the project to realise economies of scale whilst the scaffolding was in place, and this has prolonged the life of the clock face. Gilding is by its very nature delicate, and ideal conditions are needed to be met if the gilding is to last. Repairs to the clock face will form a continual part of the proactive management of the City Hall, and further repairs will be considered as we progress our work for the future City Hall, which has the ability to provide a wide range of exciting benefits for the city.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Mr. Lewis, you're allowed 1 supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you.
The second question is from Mr. Dave Schrager on behalf of the Inclusive in Norwich. As he unfortunately isn't with us, I will read the question. Norwich City Council hosts a number of events over the course of the year and strives to make them inclusive to as many residents and visitors as possible. For example, safe, quiet spaces for those who need a break from loud noise or bright lights, and wheelchair accessible viewing platforms for people who have a good view of street parades. I have noticed that these measures are not always communicated clearly or in an accessible way. Please could the Cabinet member introduce a set of guidelines to be considered for each event so that people can plan their visits in advance with consistency and enjoy everything the city has to offer. Councillor Kidman, could you please give your reply?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Hosting events which are enjoyable and accessible to as many residents and visitors as possible is a real priority for me, and I'm pleased that we're able to provide a range of accessibility offers for both audiences and performers, as you've identified. Measures such as the viewing areas are extremely popular and, in response to feedback, can be pre-booked so that users have reassurance that space will be available when they arrive. Currently, information is shared on our website and our social media channels, but we are working to achieve a more consistent approach to sharing this information in good time and in various ways. I hope this will help, and I would welcome suggestions from Inclusive Norwich as we make these changes. Our events team is working to achieve Attitude is Everything accreditation for accessibility at council-led events. Attitude is Everything are live event and music specialists who work with event industry professionals to break down the barriers that disabled people face. As part of this work, the event team will establish a consistent offer for events, communications and booking procedures to help people plan their visits.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kidman. The final question is from Ms Georgia Brumby. Ms Brumby, would you please ask your question?
At November Council, there seemed to be some confusion about Lion Homes developing the Mile Cross depot site. Councillor Osborne said he and Councillor Davies had been informed by the monitoring officer that Lion Homes were not developing it, which was denied by the leader of the council. For clarity, can I ask who is developing the site?
Thank you. Emma Hampton, Councillor, would you please give a reply?
Thank you. Bear with me a second. Councillor Stoner can't be here yet, so the reply he's been working on, but I will deliver it shortly. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for your question. The Mile Cross depot site will be developed out in phases. Planning application has been approved for 67 new homes, and for clarity, these will be developed by the council, all for affordable housing as the first phase of the development. This high-quality scheme has been designed to meet the identified housing need from our housing register. Options for the tenure of the future phases of development on the site are still being considered. Any decision to develop or dispose of the future phases of the development, including consideration of any involvement by Lion Homes, will be subject to a business case and considered in the future by Cabinet.
Ms Brumby, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah. How many homes are in the first phase?
I believe that was in the answer I just provided, 67 homes.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. We have received no petitions. Questions to Cabinet members. There are 25 questions from members of the Council to Cabinet members, of which notice had been given in accordance with the provisions of Part 3 of the Constitution. A copy will be available on the Council's website. Members who have asked questions are permitted to put a supplementary question to the Cabinet member. Councillor Driver, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, Lord Mayor. Can I just thank the Cabinet member and Giles for your answer? But it's fantastic news that the City Council Health and Housing Improvement Team has won the DFG Adaptation Service of the Year at the Healthy Housing Awards. Although I was pleased to see that West Streeting, the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, announced a significant increase in disabled facility grant funding for 25-26. Can the Cabinet member comment on this, please?
Many thanks, Councillor Driver. I want to express my thanks to our excellent staff in the Health and Housing Improvement Team for winning this prestigious national award. I welcome the Government's national funding increase for disabled facilities grants for the rest of this financial year and 2025-26. It is critical to the Labour Government's mission to build an NHS fit for the future and the Norfolk Integrated Care Strategy to move resources from tackling sickness to prioritising prevention throughout a patient's care journey. Based on research by Foundations and the Centre for Ageing Better, home assessment and modification for those at high risk of a fall offers a return on investment of £3.17 for every £1 spent, and £7.34 in social return on investment for every £1 spent. Research further suggests holistic home intervention with lower income adults experiencing difficulties with several activities of daily living, which combines reablement support, repairs and home adaptations, increases a person's physical functioning by 49%, improves depression symptoms by 53%, and reduces difficulties with activities of daily living by 75%. I will again reiterate my thanks to our staff for all their excellent hard work winning this national award.
Councillor Carrington, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thanks.
Councillor Fulton McAllister, do you have a supplementary question?
Not yet.
You won't have a supplementary question. Councillor Huntley, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Maguire, do you have a supplementary question?
I do indeed, Lord Mayor. It was really great to see your reply, and it's marvellous to see the successful outcomes the CHESS programme has delivered. In addition, can the Cabinet member inform me whether residents referred to the scheme have been supported with claiming welfare benefits?
Many thanks, Councillor Maguire. I would like to put on record my thanks to staff at Age UK for their excellent work delivering the CHESS programme. The CHESS programme has provided holistic support to residents referred to the programme, including assistance with welfare benefit applications. In total, Age UK have generated £800,000 in welfare benefits for residents of the CHESS on the CHESS programme, significantly contributing to combating poverty and financial exclusion. Thank you. Councillor
Padder, do you have a supplementary question?
No, I'm satisfied with the response. No supplementary from me. Thanks.
Councillor Harper, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, and I'd like to thank the lead member for her answer. I'm sure most councillors will agree that this is, kind of really impressive performance. Could you tell us how performance is looking so far for this quarter and what level of voids the housing team is currently working through?
Thank you for supplementary. It's been an amazing turnaround to go from where we started financial year to now. And I think the really impressive figure, and this is for December, was that we had a key-to-key time turnaround for voids of 35 days. But we're not going to be complacent with that, and I am conscious that we get a significant number of voids coming in on keys in January and February. But work is constantly being reviewed and stepped up to meet that demand. So, for example, in December, they were working in 53 voids and 5 whole house improvement projects. And if anyone hasn't seen the outcomes of some of those, there's some amazing work that's been done to really address houses that need everything looked at, and it turns around an amazing property. So I think we've continually got work ongoing to ensure that we can keep that key-to-key time as low as possible, and that we work really closely with NCSL and with other contractors to make sure that we are always able to be responsive, and that looking at how we get into properties sooner if necessary, and every opportunity where we can shave a bit of time off that key-to-key time. There's been some great work done by the team recently in terms of making sure that work can be paused, viewings can be done when the property's almost ready. So we want to get people into those houses as soon as we possibly can. Obviously that number is going to fluctuate in terms of turnaround time, but I think it's really fair to say that the team has done an exceptional job and have worked so hard to do this. From where we started to get that figure in December, I'm incredibly proud of them.
Councillor Mike Sands, do you have a supplementary question?
No, Lord Mayor. I received a very, very clear answer here, which was very, very good, very well worded. Thank you very much.
Councillor Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you. I was myself one of those affected, receiving the invoice for £65 in December 24 with no covering letter of explanation. Therefore, it took me some time over the phone and in emails to get to the bottom of why I had the demand for £65 in December 24, why my direct debit had been reduced to £49 in March 24, and why the financial year had been changed to January-December. So all in all, quite a lot of what I would call mistakes. But my question is, how many other households were affected by these mistakes, and particularly where there was no covering letter with the invoice for the £65?
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Lubbock. I'll have to come back to you on the specific numbers affected. I think I have had that information, it's just not on my head at the moment. Any outstanding details about what happened in your specific case, likewise, we'll pick up with officers outside this meeting. As my original answer notes, there were communications sent to residents impacted, but I do buy your point that there are still going to be lessons learned from this experience.
Councillor Oliver, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, I do. Yes, thank you, Councillor Hampton, for your response. Could we know when the business case is likely to be concluded, please?
I will talk to officers involved and get back to you. Again, the original answer kind of picks up some of the steps we have to go through before that can happen, but it's been made clear from your question, Councillor Smith's question previously, resident feedback, that this is a priority and we do want to keep it moving forward.
Councillor Bolton, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you for your answer, Councillor Hampton. Would it be possible to have the results of those 50 investigations, including how many resulted in actions taken against the offenders? Also, can we have a guarantee that the embarrassingly missing policy is going to involve a zero tolerance policy when it comes to enforcement approach that has been successfully implemented in other councils?
Thank you for your question or questions, Councillor Bolton. Regarding what was the first one? Details of those investigations. I will have to go away and check with officers if that is something we can share. I don't know the nature. Some of this obviously involves identifying people through personal data, that sort of thing. But if it's something we can share, happy to go through that or find a way of presenting that to you. With regards to the policy and zero tolerance, I will maybe liaise a bit more about exactly what you mean by zero tolerance in this context. We've set out in at least one of the answers here tonight and previously, and to scrutiny committee, in what circumstances we would issue fines. It has to be proportionate as per government guidelines. So yes, we want absolutely zero tolerance where this is being done maliciously, where it's kind of trades, businesses, people who really should know better. But we will always pursue an educational approach and engagement where there's actual learning to be done, and just making sure residents know how they can dispose of their waste responsibly rather than having to resort to fly tipping, sometimes, not always, inadvertently.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Councillor Sue Sands, do you have a supplementary question?
I do indeed, Lord Mayor. It's disappointing that Green members over there have in recent months made claims about this council's performance around fly tipping enforcement, which have been misleading or sometimes plainly incorrect, such as trying to claim that the council has, quote, the worst fly tipping enforcement rate of any local authority. Does the Cabinet member agree?
Thank you for both your questions, Councillor Sands, and obviously, yes, ultimately, I agree. I think the quote you just used was from a question put to us last month, and that cited the claims have come from a DEFRA report, statistics on PCNs issued that was from 2022-23. First thing to point out about that is there are only over 40 councils who didn't issue any fines, so they immediately are worse performing than us. And the next point I'd make about that is we've laid out many times here at scrutiny again how our approach since 22-23 has changed, as my original answer to your question picks up. That has involved installing CCTV, increasing enforcement resource, issuing many more fines. So that 2022 to 23 data is no longer a fair snapshot of our performance, and I don't think at the moment should be used as such as it has. And I do think there are other instances where advertently or inadvertently data has been misused and caused the public to be misled on this. I'm always up for debate, discussion, scrutiny on potential solutions to tackling fly tipping in the city, but I do think we need to keep it honest, true, factual, wherever possible.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Councillor Champion, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do have a supplementary question, and thank you for your response, Councillor Hampton. And further, thank you to the officers for all their work on Lavandro Road. It's greatly appreciated. My supplementary question is, how long should the ideal delay be between reporting illegal parking and officer enforcement?
Thank you for your questions. The answer to that, the ideal delay is there not being a delay, but we do have to be mindful of how stretched resource can be. As the answer picks up, we will communicate to try and squeeze that gap as much as we can, but unfortunately we're not in an ideal situation, so there will be some delay, and I agree that we want to work with partners as much as possible to bring that down and enforce so there's a more pleasant street environment for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Councillor Hoshner, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Hampton for her response. And your response states that the planned bin replacement programme will significantly improve opportunities for residents and visitors to dispose of their waste responsibly. Could you please clarify what this means and whether this is a commitment to not merely treat all city centre bins as general waste going forward? Thanks.
Thank you for both your questions. We buy the points you make about exploring better signage, that sort of thing. There's still a behavioural element to this as well. We've started to look, it doesn't mention which experts, I'm not sure who that's referring to. We've started to do a bit of research into how other cities have been handling this. A lot of them do face the same issues, so we'll do what we can to work towards bins that enhance recycling rates as much as possible. But if there is contamination, there's a balance to be had there about whether that can be achieved. But we are, as this touches on, we will be replacing bins and doing our best to find solutions to the problems you outline.
Councillor Young, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, and thank you, Councillor Hampton, for yet another response. We are disappointed that ward councillors were not consulted throughout this whole process, and since the decision to leave the gates unlocked in these parks, Marlcross and Nelson Green councillors have been picking up several concerns from residents. Will you commit to meeting with us to discuss the issues that have been raised directly to us?
Yes, of course, I'm happy to meet and discuss those issues. As ever, if you are receiving communications from residents, do pass them on to me, to officers. It's always worth encouraging those residents who are able to report directly through the channels to do so, so all that information comes in together in the same format, can be tracked more effectively to see trends, which will influence future decisions of this sort. But yes, I'm happy to have that meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Councillor Galvin, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Thank you for the answer. I'm really glad the bin's going to be in place in Distillery Square because the residents have worked really hard on the area. But it's taken a year since request, and that was with promises of yes from the beginning. And it's not the first time I've sat here and asked for something in council and then it finally only come when I've asked and it's been a question to council. Does it take a question to council to get things done?
Short answer to that is no. These sort of things happen across the city or on a really routine basis. Sometimes, yes, bringing it back to our attention. If something has gone wrong in a process, we can resolve that more quickly. But ultimately, no, I know from my experience as a ward councillor, this isn't always how it goes. I can't recall the other instances you've brought or what the context are, but no is the short answer to that.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. Councillor Fox, as Councillor Stannard isn't able to reply, a written response will be given. Councillor Catt. Councillor Fox, please ask your supplementary question.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, Councillor Hampton's response to the public question seemed to imply that the council, rather than Lion Homes, would develop Mile Cross. But at the last full council meeting, we sat here with Councillor Stannard, really strongly insisting that Lion Homes would be doing that development. Please, can we clarify who will deliver Mile Cross, who has oversight of it, and what Lion Homes' involvement in it is, once and for all, please?
Thank you. Councillor Catt, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, and thank you, Councillor Jones, for your answer. I was just wondering if that reduced service over 6 months was going to be communicated to residents, or we were just hoping that they wouldn't pick up on it.
We always try to engage with residents where we can. I will go back and understand what communication has taken place. And we're looking at improving different channels of communication, because what we do find often is letters aren't always the best form of doing that, because people find often official looking letters quite intimidating. So one of the things we're working on is how else we can engage and make sure information is passed on. So I will explore that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Schmierer, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you very much, Lord Mayor, and thank you also to Councillor Giles for his response. And I do note in that reply you say that the 15-year Norwich Inclusive Economic Growth Vision does commit Norwich to becoming a marmot city at the long-term delivery priority. And I do fear that a 15-year aspiration can't really be called a priority. It is important to remember that Norwich was one of only 14 local authorities with significant increases in inequalities in female life expectancy, and a recent report found that Norwich residents have faced the highest decrease in spending power by councils funding services like housing that affect drivers of health inequalities. So my question is, could I urge you to look into making Norwich a marmot city as an immediate priority, please, rather than a 15-year aspiration?
Thank you, Councillor Schmierer. All of the different district councils in Norfolk are taking a different approach to this. I mean, we've sought to embed those learnings from the Marmot report within the EDI strategy and EDI action plan, within the draft business plan to implement the community-led plan, which is obviously going to scrutiny. And we are in the process of revising the Norwich Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and the values and principles of the Marmot report will feed very much into that as well. I do think that if we get into the stage where we start committing to a different strategy at every full council, we negate the point of having any strategies or having any priorities, because we're constantly committing to a new body of work. I think it's best to, in the short term, to integrate it within existing work streams.
Councillor Calvert, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do. First of all, thank you ever so much for the answer. And thank you for the work that officers have done reducing the HMO licence backlog down from well over 5 months, which is clearly unacceptable, to a much more acceptable level now. That hard work has been completed largely, or with a large amount of support from agency staff. What is it that's holding us back from employing directly employed staff within the department to continue this good work?
Trying to recruit anyone who works in this area across any council is a real challenge at the moment. As quite rightly, scrutiny in terms of quality of housing has become far more on everyone's agenda, particularly in terms of the housing regulator and other statutory stuff that's coming forward. We've got legislation coming through Parliament around quality of accommodation, particularly around things like damp and mould. The resource of environmental health officers, particularly with a background in private sector housing, is a real challenge to recruit. There is a significant shortage across the country. So it's a challenge that every council's facing. We are exploring every option in terms of how we increase and strengthen that team and looking at other resources to support it so that we maximise what that skill set is used for, so that it's very focused around enforcement action when it needs to, and then other roles can be taken on by other staff. And we're constantly looking at different ways that we can meet that need, and whether that's training within the team, which some of that has now happened, but always looking. But it's not just us. This is across the country, and I think it's really good though that there is that competition for those staff. I wish we had more of them, but I think it's good that everyone is talking about the fact we need those staff and that resource and thinking about housing quality. I think that's a plus point to take away from it.
Councillor Kane, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Jones for your response. Just a quick one. I was wondering if any of these landlords being contacted?
So in terms of, we don't proactively go out and look at that sort of thing, but when we're commissioning some work looking at stock conditions in the private rented sector, and that will help us understand what areas we need to work in. But we're always looking at what resources we can bring around energy improvement, things like that, working closely with Councillor Hampton in terms of when there's money, making sure people are aware of it, how they can access that resource. But I think we have to prioritise our resource in terms of working on the worst of the private rented sector, and it is a bit of a focusing on that to start with and then moving on from that. We don't want anyone to live in a poor EPC rated property, but that's where we've got to explore other ways. But also landlords have a responsibility. They know they own that property. They know how it's people's homes. So I think I would push back at those landlords and say, you're making money out of that. You know that money's coming into your bank account. You've got a responsibility, and it shouldn't also fall to us. They've got to take ownership as well. That's got to sit with them because landlords need to be responsible.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Osborne, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. Obviously, this was an unfortunate error. With other, I think, occurred in flagship development at Goldsmith Street, with other developments at Mile Cross, East Norwich, Anglia Square, etc. What actions have been taken, what lessons have been learned to make sure that this error doesn't happen again, and that we don't have fees imposed to rectify the work later at a later stage?
Thank you. I am going to stick to your question, if you don't mind. I might just add that calling Goldsmith Street a much heralded development rather cocks a snook at its status as the only social housing scheme to have won the Reba Sterling Prize in the competition's 26-year history. As a county councillor, you'll no doubt be familiar with dealing with Norfolk County Council issues, and I imagine it would be difficult for you to disagree that Norwich City Council and Norwich City overall is worse off since Norwich County Council ended the joint highways agreement, NHAC. We want what's best for Norwich residents, wherever those roads are, and that includes Goldsmith Street. And dealing with problems like this, along with car-damaging potholes, the location and duration of roadworks, traffic schemes, traffic calming measures, hopefully could all become a thing of the past as we look to devolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kidman. Second questions have been received from Councillors Bolton and Hoshner, but as 30 minutes, but as no more than 30 minutes has elapsed, we can take this in line with the Constitution. So, Councillor Bolton, would you like to ask your supplementary question to your second question?
No, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Hoshner, would you have a supplementary question to your second question?
I don't think either.
We now move on to the minutes. I call upon Councillor Hampton to move the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 19th of November 2024 and extraordinary meeting 15th of December 2024.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Formally proposed.
I call upon Councillor Galvin to second the minutes.
Seconded.
We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. Treasury Management Mid-Year Review Report. I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 6.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, I will be brief because I do appreciate the size of the agenda for tonight. I think it's important to say that obviously these reports come regularly to this council. They're probably not the most contentious matters that comes before the council, but I should stress that everything that appears here comes before the Treasury Management Committee. And I'd first of all like to thank my colleagues who serve on that committee, Councillor Wright, Councillor Price, and also Councillor Hampton and Councillor Driver, who has actually acted as substitutes. And we do go through these reports in very great detail. But I do think it's actually important that the information you have here comes not just to all members to be able to see and read, but is actually available to the general public. I know of other councils, well, unfortunately, which have had to issue Section 114 notices, where, shall we say, financial details were kept within a very tight group, and I think that's wrong. I think at the end of the day, one of the reasons for our strong financial position here, and we are well regarded in the sector as a whole, I should hasten to say, is our transparency and openness. Indeed, I should say that at no expense to this council, I've been invited by the Local Government Association to address a finance conference in March, in the first week of, in Manchester in the first week of March. So I think at the end of the day, it's important that you all have this information, and I can assure you that all of this has been gone through in great detail by the Treasury Management Committee, who act, if you like, as your experts in financial matters. And as I say, I've already paid compliments to the members and their diligence in so doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. I call upon Councillor Maguire to second the item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I formally second and reserve the right to speak.
I invite group spokespersons. Councillor Hoshner.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking officers for the work preparing this report and more widely for the hard work that goes into managing our Treasury. I'll be voting to adopt the report, but I'd like to briefly highlight 2 issues. The first is the award of the Council's banking contract, which I understand has again gone to Barclays, a major funder of the arms industry and Europe's largest funder of fossil fuels. Over a year ago, we passed a motion on climate-friendly banking, acknowledging the role of the banking sector in supercharging climate breakdown by investing billions every year in the fossil fuel industry. We acknowledged then that while none of the banks offering services to the local government sector is perfect, there are different shades of dirty. Now we're recontracting the bank we know to have the worst record in climate and human rights in Europe. I'm aware that this is a market with limited choice and that existing legislation does not exactly facilitate local councils making ethics and climate their primary considerations. But I hope that we'll at least seize this opportunity to speak up about this travesty, to demand legislative change, to tell Barclays that it needs to clean up its act, and to lobby relevant bodies like the LGA to help enable climate-friendly banking by local councils.
I hope we'll also finally signpost to residents on the Norwich City Council website and on Norwich City Council social media resources to assist them in making informed choices on who they bank with particular reference to ethical considerations, including fossil fuel exposure, as requested by the motion we passed unanimously over a year ago. The second issue I'd like to briefly touch upon is the place of environmental, social and governance considerations in our investment decisions. It's great news that some 30 million of our investments are now placed in ESG funds. That's about a third of our investments, if I'm not mistaken. So that's great progress, but it also means that an important share of our investments still likely fund things our residents would not want us to fund. So it's good to know that the Treasury Management Committee has now finally resolved to pick up the topic of the ethical and sustainable management of our investments and cash balances after it's been handed for a while from one committee to the next. And it's good to know that the Treasury Management Committee will seek dedicated input and advice on best practice and learning opportunities in this area now. It's a shame that this doesn't happen through a task and finish group, which could have given this important topic the thorough attention it deserves, but at least it's on the agenda of the Treasury Management Committee now, so I hope we'll be seeing further progress soon. Thanks again to the officers, and as I said, I'll be voting to adopt this report. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As you've already heard, the Treasury Management Committee provides an opportunity for the Leader, Cabinet Member for Resources and the Chairs of Audit and Scrutiny and others to question officers and get a detailed understanding of the Council's current Treasury Management position presented in the report before members today. The Council officers take a balanced approach to borrowing and investments, and the committee has been able to question them on future strategy and seek assurance about the approach taken. And I would like to thank officers for this report and for their answers to the questions we ask at committee. Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. We agree with the approach outlined in the report. The emphasis on managing risks through adherence to established limits and indicators ensures that Treasury activity remains aligned with the Council's financial strategy. The risk management measures such as careful assessment of interest rate changes and maintaining adequate cash flow are sensible and well thought out to avoid unplanned borrowing. Additionally, keeping the Treasury Management Committee and the Council informed aligns with good governance and financial oversight.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Calvert.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just coming back on Councillor Kendrick's point, he's very proud of our financial transparency. He should be aware, of course, that this council doesn't meet its obligations under the Local Government Transparency Code of 2015. It's deficient in a number of areas and is not proactively publishing financial information that is required to do by law. I would ask him to rectify that situation. Thank you.
Councillor Maguire, do you wish to speak?
No, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
Thank you very much. First of all, to the points that the Green Party members have raised, if Councillor Calvert has any information as regards to what exactly we have trespassed against, I'm sure I and the officers will be very welcome to actually read it. So I hope he will do so and let us know. As to the other points made, firstly, I think that it is the Treasury Management Panel, which is actually the best placed, rather than a task and finish group, to actually look at the question of ethical investment. Because at the end of the day, they have the expertise, which I think will be vital in these looking at this particular issue. As to the issue of the Barclays bank contract, well, first of all, we were part of a consortium. It wasn't just Norwich City Council on its own. These were all of the Norfolk Council. So it wasn't just that we had a voice, they had a voice too. And the problem is, there is very little choice when it comes to actually finding a bank who would take up local government accounts. We used to, of course, to bank with the Co-op Bank, but they basically closed down their services to local government, which I think was a great shame, because I think they did have a very proud record of ethical investments. So given actually the fact that we are part of the group of councils, we obviously had to accept their opinion as well as our own, so it was rather a complex matter. So I think at the end of the day, I hope that this council agree to these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Carried. Regulation 10A, Review of the Development Management Policies Local Plan. I call upon Councillor Stannard to move item 7.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Council, the purpose of this report is to review Norwich's Development Management Policies Local Plan in accordance with Regulation 10A of the Town and Country Planning Local Planning England Regulations 2012. The regulations include a statutory requirement under Regulation 10A that from 2016, local planning authorities must review their local plans every 5 years to ensure they are kept up to date and are responding to changing local needs and circumstances. In summary, the report states that the majority of the DM policies are considered to be fit for purpose for decision making, although a significant proportion of these have been identified as being in need of future updates to ensure they refer to the most up-to-date information, to reflect changing circumstances and to correct any minor inaccuracies. Two policies, DM14 and DM33, are no longer fit for purpose for decision making as they are entirely out of date. However, both have been superseded by policies within the adopted Greater Norwich Local Plan. The report is asking Council to endorse a full review of the DM policies local plan to commence within the next year. But following the publication of any change to the National Planning Policy Framework, it is currently anticipated that the full review of the Development Management Policies Local Plan will commence this year. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. I call upon Councillor Hampton to second the item.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Not much at all to add to what Councillor Stannard said, but I will just thank Sustainable Development Panel members for their consideration of this as well, I think late last year, and I'm sure we look forward to engaging in the full review process as well in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. I invite group spokespersons. Councillor Schmierer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And our thanks go also to the planning team for their work in bringing this item before us. And it's not coming a moment too soon, I suppose, because we will be supporting this, of course, and definitely the recommendation to start the review in this year. But we do ask when this year. And we do also wish to put on record some of our concerns about the way this has dragged its heels. Because planning is a key facet of a district council like Norwich, and so as someone who has been on this council for the better part of a decade now, I lament how long it has been since these policies have been revised. And in that time, since 2015 of being a council, I've heard lots of promises that they would be updated, but very little action. So I am, as I say, glad that this is happening. But for years, Green councillors have requested a review of Norwich's DM policies. Because, let's face it, they are no longer, a lot of them, as we've just heard, fit for purpose. In particular, over the last decade, when we've seen issues such as the sort of proliferation of student housing, whether that be about the warming climate, we need policies that are obviously fit for purpose. And we are frustrated, in particular those councillors on the planning committee, by weak DM policies, such as those for renewable energy and the absence of policies on tall buildings in one of England's finest medieval cities. And it's important to remember that on every occasion of asking, it seems that excuses have been made for not reviewing these DM policies, the perennial excuse being that the Council is awaiting review of the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF. However, since publication in 2012, the NPPF has been revised in 2018, 2019, 2021, twice in 2023, and in December 2024. So in other words, the NPPF reviews are more frequent than maybe being let on, and updates have shown them not to be a reason for delay. The second excuse, I suppose, is that we hear is that the adoption of the Greater Norwich Local Plan was awaited, and the plan was adopted last March and covers an extensive area from Norwich all the way up to Aylsham and down as far south as this. We do need updated DM policies tailored for Norwich as our heavily built up city, with the city centre conservation area at its heart, differs considerably from districts covering suburban and rural areas outwith our city's boundaries. And the third excuse seems to be that the council says it is awaiting publication of the national development management policies for guiding local development. However, the Secretary of State has yet to publish proposals and undertake statutory public consultation, so it will be some time before adoption of these new national policies. In terms of their content, according to the House of Commons Library, it is expected that the NDMPs will set out national policies on issues that apply in most local authorities, such as heritage protection and the Green Belt, while locally specific policies will continue to be set out in local plans. In other words, they are likely to be general and high level. And it is unlikely that their content will undermine the case for reviewing Norwich's DM policies sooner rather than later, and certainly not the case for consulting the public on what they want to see in a new plan. And so I suppose the final point I want to make is that in November 2022, the Green Group tabled a motion which was amended by Labour, and it promised, this is the revised motion promised, and I quote here, to consult with elected councillors and the public on the content of a revised DM policies plan. The consultation will promote discussion on areas where the policies need to better support the council's corporate objectives and be fit for the future. The consultation will enable the review of DM policies to be progressed a lot more quickly following the publication of modifications to the Greater Norwich Local Plan. Why, therefore, did the council not abide by its promise to consult on the contents of a revised DM policy plan? This raises a general point regularly made by colleagues of mine in the Green Group about the need for the council to ensure that approved motions are implemented. Otherwise, the work of this chamber and the members here is simply wasted. The council, and this is my final point here, the council says that its traffic lights review shows that most of the current development management plan policies are fit for purpose. However, the Green Group is keen to see new policies drawn up that address those issues that have emerged in recent years. For instance, we have regularly indicated our wish to see a tall buildings policy. The serious threat of...
Councillor Schmierer, please conclude.
I will do. Basically, we cannot wait until 2026 for local policies to be fit for purpose, especially in the light of the new government's build, build, build desire, but we will be voting for this item.
Councillor Lubbock.
Yes, thank you. I do have some sympathy with what Councillor Schmierer has been saying, but I also have concern that we do have to make sure that any review is in line with the national frameworks. And yeah, so it is a bit frustrating, but I'll come on to that at the end. This report is asking Council to endorse a full review of the development management policies to commence within the next year, but, as we've heard, following the publication of any changes to the National Planning Policy Framework and the National Development Management Policies. I must admit that this report was quite difficult to read with various acronyms and repetitions it contained. However, the gist of it is that we must ensure we have up-to-date local policies by which planning applications can be determined. As these policies are only updated fully every 5 years, it's not surprising that given the speed and number of recent changes, especially to the environment, we often find those policies are out of date and behind public opinion. For example, and Martin also gave this example, for example, the public often questioning why are new houses being built without solar panels? Well, the answer is that planning policies and building regulations lag behind what is felt to be essential to tackling climate change. The review will be helpful in updating some of those issues. But I've got a little bit of an aside here. It's not only it's not the only way for representatives to ensure that planning policies are bolder and faster to fix the many climate change challenges that we face. I'd like to draw Council's attention to a private member's bill which seeks to address this issue through Parliament. Lib Dem Max Wilkinson, MP for Cheltenham, brought forward a private member's bill in October last year called the Sunshine Bill, which, if passed, will require the installation of solar panels on all new homes by October 26. It has received a second reading in the House, and the Lib Dems were delighted that there was a positive response from the Minister, who committed to bringing forward the principles of the bill later this year. An example of where planning is trying to catch up on what is generally regarded as essential measures for energy regeneration. Now that I've brought this to your attention, I hope that members please will encourage MPs to support the bill. And as a conclusion, we're happy to adopt the report. Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Thank you. Yes, I'm happy to support the recommendation, but I do have a couple of areas I'd like to ask some questions around. Firstly, around the use of the traffic lights approach to assessing policy effectiveness. It's mentioned, but it would be helpful to understand the specific criteria used to categorise policies. As Green Outlaw read, how these judgments are made and who is responsible for this evaluation. For instance, how was the decision made to classify DN18 as amber, even though much of policy has become obsolete due to new community development rights and use class changes? The report proposes waiting for clarity on national planning policy changes, such as updates to the NPPF and National Development Management Policy, before beginning a full review of the DN policies plan. Given that some of these national policy changes may be anticipated but not necessarily in 2025, what is the potential impact on planning decisions or ongoing development projects in Norwich in the meantime? Could there be a delay in addressing pressing local planning concerns if the review is deferred for any reason? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Stannard, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to opposition councillors for your comments and questions, and I will ensure officers answer your questions, Councillor Davis, in due course. So as Councillor Lubbock has said, reviews must be in line with national frameworks, and that's exactly what we are aiming to achieve. There are some very good reasons for the timing that we have. Councillor Schneer might call that excuses. I call them reasons. You would call them excuses, of course, but I argue they're very, very good reasons. So, given that everyone's indicated they'll be voting in favour, I move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? I confirm the item has been carried. Appointment of NCSL Managing Director. I call upon Councillor Stannard to move item 8.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm pleased to recommend to you the appointment of Mr. Robert Kelly as the new Managing Director of our trading company, Norwich City Services Limited. Mr. Kelly was appointed following a rigorous recruitment process, which included a final interview where I was joined by Councillors Galvin and Wright, alongside the Chair of NCSL, Hattie Llewellyn-Davies. Mr. Kelly demonstrated the key attributes we require to lead the further development of NCSL, in particular those of partnership working and the drive for operational excellence. I would like to thank the interim team for their contributions over the past 18 months to start the improvement journey of NCSL, and I'm sure Mr. Kelly will use that platform to further improve the performance of the business. I move. Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. I call upon Councillor Mike Sands to second the item.
I formally second Lord Mayor and reserve the right to speak, but I probably won't have anything to say. We'll see.
I invite group spokespersons. Councillor Galvin.
Let's see. So thank you for this item. I'm really pleased to see it here. Norwich City Services Limited has a huge impact on the lives of people in Norwich. If glass is not swept up, if fly tipping's not cleared, if damp's not dealt with in homes, if graves are not dug, if trees are not pruned, to name but a few things that they do, then we're all worse off. So we really want this sizable in-house team. NCSL currently employs over 300 people to achieve and be well looked after, and it's no secret we'd like to see them on the same terms and conditions as council staff in City Hall at all levels. In the past we've been told it's a separate organisation, and so we can't have that, but seeing this appointment come here today shows that it is a part of us, very much a part of us after all. The Green Team has long advocated for these critical services to be delivered by an in-house team, and we were frustrated during the chaotic years where private companies took them over and went bust, in one case with little warning. Norse was a port in a storm, but the subsequent transfer was not without issues, so it's been a relief and a pleasure to see the turnaround in NCSL over the past year with substantial council support. I'd like to thank Bob Granville, the interim managing director, as well as Hattie Llewellyn-Davis, the chair of the board, and the teams they've led to make this transformation. As a shareholder panel member, I would like to see all councillors involved more in supporting NCSL to achieve. There has been, in my view, unhelpful secrecy around the service, and I hope, following governance reviews, that this will be swept away, and everyone can have, as I did last year, the pleasure of visiting the depot and meeting staff. Most of all, I would like to thank those staff that do the work. I think that your new leader, Robert Kelly, will serve you well, and I wish him the very best.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Having been part of the interview process, I'm pleased to be able to speak today to endorse the appointment of Robert Kelly as Managing Director of Norwich City Services Limited. This appointment is a significant step for NCSL, and having Rob in the substantive post will be of great benefit moving forward. Rob replaces Bob Granville, who has been an exceptional interim MD for NCSL, and we owe him our thanks for his work and dedication. Rob Kelly brings a wealth of experience and a proven track record of success in leadership roles. His extensive background in managing complex projects and driving organisational growth makes him an ideal candidate for this position. His strategic vision and commitment to health and safety excellence align perfectly with the goals and values of NCSL. His leadership will be instrumental in driving the success of NCSL's business plan and ensuring that our services continue to meet the highest standards of quality and efficiency. To conclude, Rob Kelly's appointment as the Managing Director of NCSL is a strategic and well-considered decision that will benefit our Council, NCSL and the community at large. We have full confidence in Rob's ability to lead NCSL and make a positive and lasting impact on Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. We agree with recommendations in this report. The thorough recruitment process, including the use of a professional recruitment partner and a comprehensive interview process, has ensured that Robert Kelly is the best candidate for the role of Managing Director at NCSL. The proposed financial and legal arrangements, including the salary and training officer, are reasonable and in line with the requirements of the position. Additionally, the risk of not having a permanent appointment is clearly articulated, and this recommendation will provide the leadership needed for NCSL to continue delivering its business plan and services effectively in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Knight Sands, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do. Just a few words. I don't recognise any of the things or criticisms that Councillor Galvin mentioned. My experience of NCSL, certainly across my ward and other nearby wards, has been that they have been highly responsive to the needs of the community. But I do agree that Mr Kelly will inject further experience and inject an ongoing enthusiasm and motivation within NCSL. I welcome his appointment.
Thank you, Councillor Sands. Councillor Stannard, would you like to respond?
Yes, thanks very much. The only comment I'll make is that clearly the agenda item is the confirming the appointment of the new managing director. So I think all those other issues raised by Councillor Galvin aren't really pertinent to this agenda item. But I move this motion, please.
We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? I confirm the item has been carried. Meetings scheduled for Norwich City Council meetings 2025-26. This item has been deferred to the council meeting on the 25th of February 2025. We now move to the motion on devolution. I call upon Councillor Stannard to move motion 10A.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The plans for devolution and local government reorganisation set out by the government in the recently published English Devolution White Paper are a radical, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to shape the future of local government nationally and locally for the benefit of local people and their communities. This is the first such reorganisation in over 50 years, and it will not be lost on many in this chamber that as long ago as 1974, Norwich lost its county borough status, with many functions, responsibilities and services transferred to Norfolk County Council. This has resulted in 51 years in which the residents of the city not having control over the planning and delivery of key services such as transport, education, adult services, children's services and more recently public health. There is a very strong case for one unitary council to plan and provide these functions alongside current city council functions and to do it across a coherent, largely urban geography. Big, important county council services and functions for Norwich are provided by a council which is led by an administration that has no representation in the city, not one councillor in one division. Decisions affecting the city are made by largely rural councillors from towns and villages, often many miles from the city, who have no knowledge or understanding of the challenges and needs of a modern, progressive, dynamic, urban area and no direct stake in the well-being of the city. That is a massive democratic deficit and it just cannot be right on so many levels. So the first case I want to make tonight is a self-rule for Norwich. That is that the people of the city have a right to govern themselves with no outside interference, and for the councillors who make those decisions that affect Norwich residents to come from among them and be elected by them. And that isn't that just basic democracy. The White Paper provides a rare opportunity for Norwich to establish a brand new unitary council elected by and elected for the people of Norwich. Norwich is unlike any of the rest of the county. It is the only large urban area, and of course the current city-county council boundaries do not reflect the urban area. The abolition of the City Council and establishment of a brand new urban unitary would reflect the uniqueness of urban Norwich as distinct from the rural hinterland and the wider rural county. It would also reflect the economic significance of urban Norwich, which accounts for 30% of Norfolk's population, 30% of Norfolk's businesses, 60% of Norfolk's knowledge-intensive employment, and nationally significant sector specialisms in health, 29,000 jobs in health, and finance and insurance, 8,000 jobs. Norwich is a jewel in the crown of the county's economy, and when Norwich succeeds, Norfolk as a whole succeeds. But Norwich is different to the rest of Norfolk in other ways. Despite perceptions of affluence, 1 in 5 neighbourhoods are within the top 10% most deprived nationally. More than a third of Norwich children grow up in poverty. Low pay is a challenge. The average pay for working people in Norwich is £3,100 lower than the national average. 22% of Norwich's population is aged 19 and under. Norwich is the 10th most unequal local authority in England in terms of education attainment. These statistics demonstrate how Norwich has been let down by 51 years of not governing itself, not having a dedicated unitary council which could have a laser-like focus on the challenges and needs of the city and could concentrate only on that. Council, based on the evidence, there are compelling arguments for a single unitary council for Norwich. Firstly, realising growth potential. Urban Norwich has significant capacity for housing and job growth in the coming years. A unitary council for Norwich can support more cohesive planning policy to unlock the growth potential of both the city centre and the urban fringe. Secondly, more holistic action to address health inequalities would be possible. Residents' health inequalities have worsened significantly over the last decade. A unitary council would be able to support a more joined-up approach to addressing the social determinants of health by coordinating responsibilities across housing, public health, social care and education. And then thirdly, tackling longer-term underperformance in education and skills. Now, this is the primary barrier to economic growth across Greater Norwich, coupled with low social mobility, which has been a long-term issue for this region. A Norwich Unitary will be well placed to address these challenges for local people. It would be able to forge closer connections to schools and communities and be more responsive to local needs. These are all incredibly exciting prospects for the people of Norwich. and it is our generation who must grasp them for future generations to come. These are the big prizes. This is the big picture. And I know there will be details about the proposals and the process and not everyone will feel comfortable with. But of course nothing is ever perfect, and one thing is for sure. The government is determined to implement these changes and to implement them quickly. That's been made very clear and there's nothing we can do to change it. So as ever, the best policy, the most effective policy, is to concentrate on the things we can influence in order to get the best deal for Norwich and its people. And the most important thing we can influence right now is a decision about the size and number of unitary authorities that will be established in Norfolk. That is a live debate amongst councils, partners and stakeholders as we speak. The County Council would doubtless prefer a single county-wide unitary. Some districts will argue for two large unitaries covering the east and west of the county. In both these options, Norwich would be submerged in a largely rural council and nothing much would change. Those dreadful statistics would most likely endure, the democratic deficit would continue. So the purpose of this motion tonight is to send a very clear message to government and partners that this council fully supports a unitary council for Norwich and is committed to do the necessary work to achieve it. It is also to make clear that we will work with our colleagues in other districts to ensure solutions that work for all communities, not just ourselves. We want the best for Norwich, but we understand our shared responsibility with colleagues in other districts for the good and well-being of the whole of the county. So, Council, we have the opportunity to right the wrongs of 1974 and 2010 and work for Norwich to regain control over its destiny, and I commend this motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. I call upon Councillor Galvin to move motion 10A.
I'm happy to move this motion and defer to my group spokesperson, Councillor Kane, to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin and Lord Mayor. I think that everyone in this chamber would agree that it is an honour to represent the people of the city of Norwich. I'm someone who shies away from expressions of patriotism, but I certainly feel what I consider to be a local patriotism for this fine city. And I know I'm far from alone in this. Norwich is a historic city with a legacy of radicalism and doing it different. Like many cities, it's a progressive place, and one which seeks to elect progressive representatives who will both protect its rich heritage and look forward to what it can become. Councils of the past in Norwich brought in some of the first social housing in the country, built by and for local people, which under the guide of Dorothy Jewson enabled all the people in all of the slums to move into social housing, and saw Patricia Hodge fight tooth and nail against Margaret Thatcher to keep Norwich's social housing from being sold off. Did I say Patricia Hodge? I'm sorry. She's someone completely different. She's looking down on me and tutting. Patricia Hollis. We can do this because the people of Norwich have been able to elect people who will represent their interests. Housing falls under City Council's brief. But when it comes to things such as road and transportation, the progressive representatives of the people of Norwich are often up against those that do not always have our city's best interests at heart. I read with great relief today, Norfolk County Council is withdrawing its planning application for the Western Link. It was a deeply unpopular policy with the people of Norwich, thrust upon them by people they had not and would never have chosen to represent them. I also think of the current government's manifesto pledge to allow councils to bring public transportation back into municipal control. Should this policy be adopted, it is something that should be in the hands of the people of Norwich and the representatives that they choose. So I welcome the proposed changes and would relish Norwich once again being a trailblazer. However, we must work closely with district council colleagues and make sure the best is achieved for everyone. Whilst we welcome these changes, there are some red flags, and we have a duty to ensure that we protect against power being in fewer rather than more hands, whilst ensuring grassroots voices are heard. These include concentrating power in less hands in the form of a single mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk, creating large super council unitaries where local representatives could be accountable to many, many times more people, and therefore able to represent their needs much less effectively, and that the speed with which all this is being done and the lack of real consultation means that there is little, if any, voice from the grassroots of local government and people. As well as this, the sudden cancellation of elections, most likely for the next 2 years, is not a good look for us or local democracy. Elections that were due to take place in all 21 county council areas are now in the balance, and the District Council's network has warned that millions could be deprived of their local democracy. This includes Norwich. We do understand the Labour Party want to get on with this quickly and wish to avoid situations such as general elections where other parties abruptly cancel plans, as Eric Pickles MP did on 26th of May 2010, leaving some wards without the right number of councillors overnight and depriving councils in Norfolk, Suffolk and Devon of unitary status. But it would be short-sighted not to put these concerns forward to try and avoid possible pitfalls. And as a council group, we seek to work in a non-partisan way, recognising there is more that unites us than divides us, and that we all have the best interests of the people of Norwich at heart. Therefore, we are glad to jointly propose this motion for the sake of the city I know we all love. Democracy is under threat, here and across Europe with the rise of the far right, and of course, being seen quite chillingly in the US, with power being put into the hands of a few self-serving billionaires and their questionable hand signals. We can feel powerless, but as a council, our power is to make sure our corner of the world is a better place for the people who live in it, and that we deliver with devolution, more democracy, more accountability, and make sure the huge opportunities of devolution don't get lost in translation.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Wright to move motion 10A.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This joint motion before us, the reorganisation of local government in Norwich, is vital to our city. As we stand on the brink of significant change, it's crucial that we understand the implications and the opportunities that lie ahead. The publication of the English Devolution White Paper, just before Christmas, on December 16th, has set the stage for a major shake-up of local government across England. This includes the creation of unitary councils by 2728 and the introduction of an elected mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk. Whatever members' own views are, the government's intention is clear: to devolve power from Whitehall to local areas, igniting growth in every region and ensuring local voices are heard and respected. Doing nothing is not an option. The County Council has made its views clear by voting to apply to be part of the priority programme. Whilst many will lament the potential postponement of elections because of this, that fact has now passed, and we must focus on what is needed to ensure citizens of the wider Norwich urban area are well served going forward. For Norwich, this reorganisation presents a unique opportunity to improve service delivery, increase democratic engagement and address local priorities. However, it is essential that these changes are designed inclusively, transparently and in ways that protect the local accountability and democratic function of our local councils. Norwich is an economic powerhouse, contributing significantly to the region's prosperity. City Council's employment rate stands at 82.7% for ages 16 to 64, which is higher than the East of England's average of 77.5%. Additionally, Norwich has seen a residential population growth of 54%, ranking it 10th in the UK for growth rate. These statistics highlight the city's vibrant economy and its potential for further growth and development. We believe that local government reorganisation should amplify both the voice and potential of Norwich and its urban area. Our city is an economic powerhouse, and this reorganisation must maximise its potential. As the motion stresses, the timetable for these changes is ambitious, and it will be challenging to ensure full and proper engagement for all citizens. Therefore, the government must ensure that a statutory consultation is as far-reaching as possible. As we move forward, we must advocate for reform that empowers local communities and retains a healthy ratio of representatives to residents. A potential reduction to one councillor per ward would be disastrous for citizen representation and support. Getting this right will protect district level services that are critical to addressing local needs and priorities. We must also ensure that any proposed changes include a commitment to fully fund new responsibilities transferred to local authorities, enabling the workforce to meet increased service demands effectively. I was born in Norwich the year after we lost our county borough status, so I've only ever known this way of working. And this really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape our city for the future. Colleagues who have sat in meetings with me about this devolution and reorganisation changes know that I'm particularly keen that we don't lose the aspects of Norwich that make us so special, and that we should think creatively about what needs to happen to preserve the office of Lord Mayor and Sheriff and other civic functions, possibly via a large parish council that would cover the current city boundary, but that's a discussion for another day. There are so many questions that will be asked in the weeks and months ahead, but let us work together to ensure this process is democratic, well considered and respectful of our community's needs and aspirations. This reorganisation is a chance to right the wrongs of the past and to build a stronger, more accountable local government structure that truly serves the people of Norwich. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Hampton to second the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This joint motion correctly highlights the significant opportunity presented by the English Devolution White Paper, which aims to devolve power from Whitehall to local areas. As noted, this provides an important chance for local government reorganisation, which could greatly improve service delivery, democratic engagement and local priorities. The creation of a unitary authority for the Norwich urban area, focused on responding to the needs of its residents, is a step in the right direction. It's crucial that Norwich, as a key economic powerhouse of the region, has a governance structure that can address its unique challenges and maximise its growth potential. However, there are concerns regarding the framework for devolution, as outlined in the White Paper. The proposal includes mayoral authorities, which may centralise significant powers in the hands of a single individual, raising concerns about local accountability and democratic oversight. It is vital that any new system of governance preserves a balance of power and does not diminish the role of local councils or dilute citizens' ability to influence decision-making. Moreover, there are significant reservations about the control of budgets under this framework. Devolution should be about empowering local authorities and communities, not simply transferring central government functions under new management. For Norwich and for other urban areas, the ability to retain a degree of financial autonomy is critical to ensuring that local priorities are properly funded. The current proposals raise concerns that without significant safeguards, local control over spending could be undermined by an overarching mayoral office that might prioritise regional projects over the needs of specific areas within the city. It is also important to question whether the system proposed truly represents devolution. True devolution involves empowering local communities and devolving real decision-making power to local authorities. If the structure merely shifts responsibility without giving local leaders genuine authority over key decisions, we risk reinforcing existing hierarchies rather than empowering communities at the grassroots level. We must be clear that any devolution process brings genuine power to local authorities and residents rather than merely creating new layers of bureaucracy. That being said, the proposal for a unitary authority offers an opportunity to ensure that decisions are made locally and that our city's economic, social and environmental needs are better represented. I fully support the development of a business case for this unitary authority, but I urge that any such case be crafted with a strong emphasis on preserving local autonomy, accountability and control over budgets. In addition, the motion's call to collaborate with other authorities in developing new models for service delivery is essential to ensure that we build on best practices and deliver services in the most efficient way possible. This should not be about a race to centralised power, but about building a system that works for all communities, addressing inequalities and ensuring that services are responsive to local needs. In conclusion, I move the motion recognising the opportunity it provides for improving governance and service delivery in Norwich, However, I believe the implementation of these changes must be approached with caution, ensuring that power is genuinely devolved to local communities and that the framework does not centralise decision-making or budgets in a way that weakens local control. Let us receive with enthusiasm for a new unitary authority, but with careful attention to the risks of an overly centralised approach.
I call upon Councillor Hampton to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I am really pleased to be seconding this motion on one of several seconders, and I think the way this has been moved with all 4 leaders signed up to propose is unique as far as I've seen before, and it does send a really strong message on this issue. And although it poses some uncertainties and potential challenges in the short term, the government's English devolution white paper certainly presents one of the biggest opportunities for this city that's come around for some time. So it's fitting that this is something we've all been able to come together on, putting party politics to one side in order to put forward a case for what's best for the city. And we do have to keep the focus on what's best for the city of Norwich, not for Norwich City Council. I certainly share the views set out in this motion, but what's best for the city is a unitary authority for Norwich on extended urban boundaries. Norwich is different from the rest of Norfolk in terms of its urban area, social makeup, political leadership, and much more beyond that. It's a unique city, a fine city, which deserves to be running its own affairs and operating with a clear focus on the needs of Norwich. We've all seen the issues that can arise at the moment when decisions which have a big impact on our city and our residents are made by the county council, currently Conservative run and with no administration councillors elected to represent Norwich, and especially given my portfolio and time on the Transport for Norwich steering group over the past year or whatever it's been, transport really jumps to mind in this context. A unitary urban Norwich will be a big step towards this city regaining control of its future. Such an authority has big potential to be more efficient, with more integrated services, less duplication and greater consistency in delivery standards. There's less likely to be confusion among residents, which I think we all face, about which authority does what, in turn hopefully improving understanding of what their local councils can do and why engaging in the democratic process which underpins this is important. There's lots of details I'm sure that members here, that the public alike will be interested in or want reassurance on in due course, boundaries, number of councillors, mayor and sheriff, but the most important thing right now at this stage is that we push to get the basic model right in order to lay the foundations for the best possible solution for Norwich. We're an ambitious and an important city, and it's time we're given more of an opportunity to lead from the front and realise that ambition fully. Thank you to Councillor Stonnard for his tireless work over the past few weeks and months to make the case for Norwich with government, with local partners, and as a deputy I've had a little bit of an insight into quite how full on I think that can be at times. And thank you to him and the other group leaders and representatives for their work in putting forward this motion tonight. I really hope all members can support it.
I call upon Councillor Galvin to second the motion.
Thank you. I won't say much because a lot has been said already, but thank you to Mike for all his work taking this forward, and to all the officer team too, who I know have been working incredibly hard with very little notice in a huge scope. It is something that's been done elsewhere. It's not exactly new. Reorganisation has been achieved in many other big places in very complex situations, so there's a lot we can learn from. But there's a lot of work to do and there's a lot of listening to do, because we haven't really had a chance to ask residents or anyone much what they think of this. So there have been a lot of conversations behind closed doors, which is probably as it has to be, but really very little has been shared yet, so I think that's an important next stage. I'd really like to talk about the mayoral level as well, because while I support keeping a mayor here, there obviously is going to be this mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk as part of this deal, and Mike said, you know, that's a big prize. It's also a big price. It is a big price, and it's expensive to stand for mayor. It's costly, and there are high spending limits, and given what we've seen happening in America at the moment, how money can frankly buy power, we have to be very careful the situation we're going to get ourselves in. I support what other people have said here. It also needs the mayoral system, a fairer voting system. Mayoral votes did have that, but the Tories removed it. this is a chance to put that back. The S3 voting system, it could come back in. So again, this is important. These are not minor points. These will really impact our democracy if we get a set of mayors that, you know, are intent on going in a very different direction to us. It could be very difficult for us all. And directly elected assemblies for those mayors could be thought of as well. I agree that the best policy is what we can influence, but sometimes you have to say these things anyway and try and influence things because it's too important to remain silent, especially if you're being rushed. As has been remarked before, any trading standards officer will tell you, don't take a quick decision. Take your time, try and think things through and say what you think about things. So I hope we'll continue to do that while also fully supporting a Norwich unitary on whatever boundaries can be put forward that are acceptable to all our neighbours. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Lovett to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This motion is the first step towards stating the case for a Greater Norwich Unitary Council, backed, I'm pleased to say, by cross-party support. This council has already demonstrated its ability to work across current boundaries with regard to planning and the production of the Greater Norwich Local Plan, and more recently, an economic strategy for Greater Norwich. We need that strength in cooperating with the neighbouring authorities to continue and to be accepted as the logical way forward in drawing the unitary boundaries to tackle inequality and accelerate growth. And I'm pleased that the issue of proportional representation has been brought up, because I think this is an opportunity to state the case for it, and in such an important election as the mayor of two very large counties, I think it's the time that we should state that that's the aim. So I'm fully in support, and I do accept there's going to be a lot more work for everybody as the days and weeks go by. But I think it's a goal worth fighting for. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Oliver to second the motion.
Formally second, Chair, and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Sue Sands.
Very brief one. Keith, Judith and myself have been here before, obviously. I was a cabinet member during the last unitary bid, and I do not underestimate the level of work a unitary Norwich will be. We did have it for a few weeks 15 years ago, and I'm just saying I'm so glad that Unitary for Norwich is back on the table again. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Sands.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I agree with Councillor Galvin that a lunatic is now in charge of the world's largest asylum, which is the US. Now, there was a time long ago in medieval Britain when Norwich was an important port city with direct links to Europe. It was indeed second only to London as the most important city in Britain. Even today, Norwich retains primacy as the most influential city in the region, not just in Norfolk. It is important that Norwich asserts itself with some rational argument in the reorganisation of local government by presenting a strong case for becoming a unitary authority and continues to be a powerhouse for the region. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Driver.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. For someone who sat in this council chamber the first time we actually lost control of the city and I went to county, I can remember my father sitting just there, that seat there, and I was on a balcony up the top. When it all changed and the county took over, they took over everything that we were doing so well, I thought, those days. I've been waiting for devolution ever since. And to bring that back to the city now is a
fantastic idea, but we've got to be careful about how we bring that into the city. We're talking about councils taking on the debts of the other councils. County council have got a mega debt. Are we going to afford to pay for all that debt? And I hope that Mike and other people who are on the negotiation committee will ask that the government will help us out with the debts when we take them on. If not, disappear. South Norfolk would disappear. The Brighton, they're all going to disappear. What name you call the new authority? Should we be bullish and say, well, that's Norwich and South Norfolk don't make any difference, or Brighton don't make any difference, or North Norfolk don't make any difference, whatever we bring into a greater unitary, I think we need a different name completely and not just Norwich for that at all, to bring in a wider area. But that's me personally. The mayor, I'm totally against the mayor for Suffolk and Norfolk full stop. I understand we've got to have one to bring unitary in, so I think we have to agree with that as well. But I just think that there's so much work to do within, well, we're talking about a year and a half, 2 years, officers and stuff here. I mean, senior officers, I mean, you don't need...
Councillor Driver, could you come...
You don't need 16 new officers from the 6 different councils which are there now to bring in, to only have one. But you're going to need a lot more staff as well. So we've got to start looking for staff. I mean, we can't get staff here now. So we've got to be careful about what we take on and what we do. So I'll just put the wardens out there.
Councillor Oliver, do you wish to speak?
Not sure that I would be able to do that justice following that impassioned second that, Councillor Driver. Thank you.
Councillor Davis, would you like to respond?
I'd just like to thank all the officers and the group leaders for all agreeing to move this jointly. I think it's going to be, positive going forward. I think that quite a few of us do have concerns around the mayor, but we've got to get involved at this stage, and we've got to try and shape this as well as we can together. Thank you.
Councillor Wright, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. The devil really is going to be in the detail for this, and I don't think any of us are shy to the fact of just how much work is going to be involved over the coming months. But I think I definitely get the sense from having met with group leaders over the last few weeks talking about this and hearing impassioned comments this evening that councillors in this chamber really want to do the very best for our citizens moving forward, and we can work together to achieve that. Thank you.
Councillor Kane, would you like to respond?
Just to reiterate what Councillor Wright and the other councillors have said, I actually think it's really positive that we've all come in here and just said we've got to be careful about these things. I think it shows that we're taking a positive step forward. We're not just rushing into it, but that there is huge enthusiasm, and I really look forward to the councillors of Norwich, or whatever we do decide, perhaps the Patricia Hodge Memorial Council. But the councillors of Norwich will be able to represent fully the people of Norwich, and it's just so heartening to see the passion on that in this chamber. Thanks.
Councillor Stannard, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you all those who have contributed to the debate for your very helpful comments. The key message tonight from this council for government and our partners is that we are unanimous across all 4 parties represented in this chamber in our support for an urban unitary Norwich Council, whatever we may end up calling it. I think we're running ahead of ourselves perhaps a little bit. And also that we have very strong arguments in support, including addressing the democratic deficit, more effectively addressing inequalities, supporting growth and improving education and skills, and therefore social mobility. Really, really important issues, fundamental challenges and issues for this city. The opportunity And I hear what people say about caution, yeah, absolutely, but the opportunities are massive and really, really exciting. And it's our responsibility, it falls to this generation of city councillors to grasp those opportunities and to deliver the benefits for not just our current citizens, but future generations of citizens of this city. So I commend this motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Stannard. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour? That is unanimous and carried. We will now move to motion 10B, Trees Planting for the Future. I call upon Councillor Champion to move motion 10B.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Either a city in an orchard or an orchard in a city, so equally are the houses and trees blended in. So said Thomas Fuller famously in 1662. With population growth, Norwich's pastures, gardens and orchards have reduced and vanished over the years. But the legacy of a city in an arboreal setting was reflected in the interwar years by the landscape designs of Captain Sans Winch, who was the City Council's park superintendent. He was a passionate advocate of trees. The captain made room for 20,000 trees, young trees, in new spacious housing communities and parks and along roads laid out on farmland beyond the cramped medieval city and in beyond the rings of our Astora terraces. This was many years ago now. The surviving trees and their layout from that era, a dimming reminder of this horticultural prowess and this legacy which we have let slip. I would suggest that the motion that I'm bringing tonight is an effort to help focus our minds. Forest Research conducted research and put together an assessment in 2020 of the forest cover. And their tree canopy coverage for each of the city's 13 wards. 9 of these wards fell below the Forest Research's recommended 20% minimum level of provision. Notably, Mancroft and Sewell, with 10.7 and 11% respectively for their tree cover. Urban trees are vital for a healthy environment. Trees remove and store carbon. They cool their surroundings. They slow the flow of rainfall and reduce flooding. They improve air quality and screen homes from traffic noise. They provide nesting and roosting places and food for insects, birds and animals, as well as fruit and nuts for people. Trees lift the spirits of people. They promote well-being. They create a sense of place and character and value in neighbourhoods. Unfortunately, trees are frequently viewed as nice to have, rather than a critical necessity. As Councillor Driver pointed out, there is a disjointed nature between the different councils as it stands. And this motion has got varying asks, one of which is to work more closely with the County Council so that the City Council and the County Council can have a collaborative approach to address the issue of planting trees within our city, which is often one of the hindrances for further planting. This motion asks for us to talk about tree maintenance in our Citizen magazine, which is soon to be going online, and so therefore that article could have lots of links and could assist people in Norwich to understand when they're planting trees, how to keep them alive, how to ensure that those trees, which are often given away by organisations are able to survive, how to look after trees in a more general sense. I am sure that there are residents within the city who would contribute their time to create a comprehensive article. The beauty of an article in an online magazine is it isn't limited. It could be extensive and it could be very useful. We have also asked for tree equity, tree equity across our wards by 2045. And that we would really, it would be really helpful and really good if we could achieve the same. There are areas of the city, as I have said, in Mancroft, which are almost half of what the stated objective of forest research's 20% tree cover is currently. This would go a long way to ensuring that these areas have got improved well-being, improved biodiversity, by focusing our minds on ensuring that we plant more trees, that we maintain more trees, that we work with other organisations collaboratively, will ensure that we can achieve our biodiversity goals with our biodiversity strategy. I would also suggest that with climate change within our lifetimes, we are going to face catastrophic, and I don't use that word lightly, I think many people often forget the extreme realities that climate change will pose within our lifetimes and within our children's lifetimes. This motion also asks that we consider planting more edible trees, plants and shrubberies in our cities, parks and open spaces, creating a foundation upon which we can build skills and also ensure that we've got the biodiversity and the plants with which we could address some of the issues which will come to pass. I ask that the members of this chamber would support this motion and that we can take this motion and ensure that we can become a tree city of the world. We can join an organisation and that we can join other cities, many councils in this country. And if we consider our previous motion, by passing this motion today, that would create a legacy that we can then pass on to any future authority that comes into being, where they can take on this and they can continue that good work. I would suggest that Norwich's trees are our past, our present and our future. Our survival depends on trees, and yet we take them for granted. I implore you to take the time to consider this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. I call upon Councillor Fox to second the motion.
Formally seconded and reserve the right to speak.
I invite group spokespersons. Councillor Hampton.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you very much to Councillors Champion and Fox for bringing this motion forward today. Certainly agree with the sentiment of it and what's said in the motion, and you said verbally about the utmost importance, social and environmentally, of tree planting for our city and beyond. So what I'll do is I'll focus on some of the more specific asks in the motion that we have a few thoughts on. So starting with resolution 1, yes, I absolutely do want to thank officers both here and at other authorities we work with for their collective efforts in aiding nature recovery in our region, without a doubt. With regards to points 2 and 3, engaging with County Council over issues with public liability and the citizen point, especially having discussed with you kind of what you wanted out of these. I get the sentiment, but when I was talking to colleagues, I don't think there's quite enough clarity about what was being asked. I think we all need to be on the same page about the intention behind these, so I don't want to throw them out completely, but I do think they need a bit more consideration and clarity. Point 4, on achieving tree equity across all of Norwich's wards by 2045. It's a really interesting one, and I would happily kind of support that as an ambition, but especially given, as you mentioned, some of the wards that have a lower tree equity score. They're urban, developed, quite city centre a lot of the time, at the end of the day, there's a very big role for county in doing this work as the councils are organised at the moment. We won't be able to achieve that without their input, so we would have liked to see that point reflect sort of utmost need for partnership working, although we're always happy to do what we can towards that aim. 5 on incorporating more edible trees, plants and shrubbery in our parks and open spaces. Certainly have asked officers to look at that, and it's already a theme that's been picked up in our biodiversity strategy, so we agree with you there. Point 6A, the Council's Twinning Committee. This is another one we would like to do a bit more work looking into whether this would be possible or appropriate. My understanding, and from those I've spoken to, is that a twinning agreement should be between an existing and ongoing relationship between the two geographies concerned. We need to do more work to look into the technicalities around that, as well as how much this would support our off-site setting or carbon removal strategies, if it would tie in with that, to what extent. But again, agree with the principle of having a stronger connection to the communities at the locations where we're looking to do that work. And a really important one, 6B, to commission a comprehensive tree strategy for Norwich. I appreciate you probably didn't know this at the time this came through, and we've had a conversation since, but we have been working on a tree strategy. It's in very final stages of sort of internal sign-off, and we were already hoping to bring this to seat the climate panel in June, and I'll come back to that in a second. So I think the Labour group feels that these points should probably be looked at in that context, rather than pass a set of fairly piecemeal standalone points, although this should be considered and see. You mentioned the process for Norwich to become a tree city of the world. Yeah, we're happy to consider. We're fairly close to meeting the criteria by the looks of things, just a bit more work to be done on the feasibility of that. As I say, this tree strategy is work we're intending to bring to SEEP. We certainly don't want to kind of throw out the points in this motion entirely. There's a lot we can agree on, and one overriding theme actually is this arrived with us later than usual, and we've spoken about the reasons why it wasn't intentional. We've all had really hectic weeks, but it does mean have much less opportunity to talk to colleagues, to officers, to consider the points. I do think it needs considering, but I would rather we took this to SEEP and did that there. So to that end, I would like to move a motion under 74A to refer the matter directly to the Climate and Environmental Emergency Executive Panel. Have I said that right? Thank you very much.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Giles. We will now debate the motion. Do we have anybody who would wish to speak? Any councillors? Councillor Champion.
I apologise. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to speak because I'd just spoken. And I guess it's a bureaucracy. One of my frustrations of local government is bureaucracy, and I find that often I've just heard agreement with all these things, but the wording isn't quite correct. So, for instance, when we're talking about twinning, I've asked for us to explore the possibility. I would ask you as a council, and this is a rare opportunity. I would really like to say this out loud. There has been no amendment to this motion. This is a rare opportunity for us actually to do democracy, where we can actually deliberate the facts. I've asked us to explore the possibility of using the council's twinning committee to, that's exploring. I'm not committing. There's no commitment. It's an ask to explore. I really feel that that's reasonable. to commission a comprehensive tree strategy of Norwich. Councillor Giles, it's interesting that you second this, because in the full council in March 2023, you said that the council was finalising the draft tree strategy. This was 2 years ago. And there was years before that when I was hearing about the tree strategy, and yet when I was trying to research this motion, I could not gain any glimmer of the tree strategy when I asked. And so when I say to commission a comprehensive tree strategy, I welcome that I am now told that there is a tree strategy which is planned to come to SEEP in 6 months' time, bearing in mind that if it came to SEEP in 6 months' time, that's an advisory committee that would then advise Cabinet, which would then consider what it's doing, which would then be disbanded because this council is going in the liquidizer, as we just agreed just a moment ago. So what I would suggest is that actually we don't need to kick this down the road. And I know that you've all been told how to vote. I know how the whipping system works, but possibly...
Lord Mayor, I object to the last comments. He's putting words into, or trying to put words into the Labour group's mouth here, which simply don't exist. There's been no whipping on this at all.
My apologies, Councillor Sands. I apologise for inferring that the Labour Party is whipped and encouraged to vote in the same way on any motion. And with that in mind, I look forward to seeing a variety of votes based on your conscience and your decision-making capacity. That's encouraging. If I may continue without being interrupted further.
Excuse me, that was valid. It was a point of order because you were making an untrue and false comment. And I'd like that to be noted in the minutes.
Is it duly noted? May I continue? Crack on. I'll crack on then, shall I?
Can I just interject?
Yes.
I just need to assist, I think, just to focus Councillor's mind. We're actually debating the motion at the moment to refer it directly to...
Yes, and if I may...
And you can speak on this motion, Councillor, but you need to make sure that you are focusing on just that point.
The reason I am speaking is because I honestly believe, and I appreciate sending it to SEEP, has its merits, but equally, I would suggest that actually we could easily pass this motion tonight. It would be no skin off your nose.
Please conclude. I think you've had your minutes, Councillor.
In conclusion, I would ask you to consider allowing this to be passed tonight, because actually if you were to take some time to read through the motion, and I'd encourage you to do so now, I think you will find that it's entirely workable and doesn't need to be delayed by 6 months and then delayed further when it goes to Cabinet, and then delayed further before any of the actions are actually passed. We all know that the motions tracker is broken. Let's get this on. Let's then get the tracker working.
Champion, conclude, please.
And I conclude. Thank you very much.
Councillor Calvert.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I think it's extremely unfortunate that the Labour group want to kick this into the long grass, purely because they just haven't had time to consider a sensible motion which they broadly agree with. I mean, it's clear that the Labour group can accept a motion, think about the 4-day week campaign, vote for it wholeheartedly, and then just change their mind. Why do they have to think that this must be rejected at this point and sent to a committee, ironically called the Climate Emergency Committee, or similar? And it's, think of that climate emergency and how you're kicking this can as far down the road as you possibly can using a climate emergency environment executive panel to do so. I don't think we should defer.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Councillor Lubbock.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to thank Councillors Champion and Fox for bringing this motion forward and highlighting the importance of trees to future climate proofing the city and also their importance to the general well-being of people. However, a current tree strategy has already been completed, although not yet signed off. So there is an opportunity for the SEEP committee to examine aspects of this motion to see whether they can be incorporated into the strategy. I mean, the whole thrust of the strategy is to commission a tree strategy. Well, nobody wants duplication. But we do want to, as Councillor Hampton has already said, take some of these issues forward. And so I think it's an ideal opportunity to get SEEP to discuss these matters that you bring up and see where they can be incorporated into the strategy. That also, coupled with the context of the local government reorganisation, doubtless in 2 years' time, when there is a new authority with new boundaries and new powers, there will need to be a review of the strategy at that stage to take those changes into account. So it's lost some of its thrust, but it's not lost all of it if those issues can be teased out. And we do need clarity on what you mean by the public liability that stands in the way of planting new trees, and likewise the issue of offsetting and the desire for it to as far as possible be kept within the boundaries of local authority. And I do agree. I feel it should be especially within the boundaries where any offsetting relates to nutrient neutrality. So all these things do need extra consideration. We do want to see, well, I certainly would like to see them in the tree strategy, and I'd very much like to see the tree strategy, as it was news to me that we had one. But I did receive today information that we did, and the idea of actually incorporating what's good about your motion and seeing if it can be placed in the tree strategy, and that seems a very sensible stance to take, and I'd like to speak in favour of it being referred to the SEEP committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lubbock. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We all love trees, and I can understand why some people get very passionate. But Councillor Champion, you have great passion, and I appreciate that. And your voice would carry across a town square, no problem. But you shout, and it's uncomfortable to hear you shout. It feels aggressive at times. I would be grateful for you to keep your passion, but just keep it a little lower, please. And it's because of the passions that we feel that I think it's important that in a panel like SEEP, these things are discussed much more collegiately. They're discussed in a calmer, thoughtful manner. This is not happening. When SEEP have considered and realised just the progress that has been made, then a series of sensible recommendations can be made to Cabinet. I think it's important that we do not rush into a motion which could be interpreted in so many ways. A thoughtful discussion and analysis in SEEP is the way for this council to progress. I shall be voting for this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Councillor Padder.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. I essentially agree with Councillors Lubbock and Maguire. I think I sit on SEEP, and from my perspective, I have a minimal understanding of trees, but I do have some understanding, and I would personally like to drill down into the detail on how these how the tree strategy sits along other strategies and how we deal with other greenhouse gases alongside carbon. So I will support in favour of moving this to seat. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Padder. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and I will comment as I was referenced by Councillor Champion. I do think, given that officers have spent such a vast amount of time producing a comprehensive tree strategy, that it would make sense to consider it in detail, comprehensively at the seat panel, rather than prejudging that discussion on the broader strategy tonight. I do apologise for the length of delay between my answer to that question that you referenced and now. There was a decision taken. I didn't knowingly mislead the council, but there was a decision taken once the Parks and Open Spaces strategy was commenced, that the trees strategy would sit under that strategy and be informed by it, and that's why there has been that delay. But I will say that the council has been successful with a number of national funding bids since that time in getting trees planted across the city.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Hampton.
Councillor Davis.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Yes, I won't be supporting this motion to send this to seat. The reason being that we don't have a voice on seat as independents. So the only time we can discuss this motion is in here. We don't have a place on seat. We don't have a place on cabinet. So in order for all groups to discuss it, I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Hampton.
Councillor Fox, I think, has been indicated.
Councillor Fox.
Thank you. For me, it's how long do we discuss these things before action happens? And I'm just so frustrated because people in the city, they want to see trees. They want improved tree cover. Everybody sees the importance of this. Everybody's seen the floods in Valencia. Everybody's seen California burning. And they know that however we're acting, we're already acting too late on increasing tree canopy cover. And yet, not one single there's been lots of curiosity here tonight about what we mean by lots of these points, but this motion went in ahead of the motion deadline. I haven't received a single email asking for a point of clarity. So I don't know where the curiosity suddenly sprung up from this evening, where any of these questions could have been asked, and both Councillor Champion and myself would have happily answered any of those questions. So it shouldn't, it's not, it's just the irony of we need tree planting now. People in the city understand what these barriers to tree planting are. They know that if they've tried to get street trees, they've struggled with the provision, of finding that the council won't provide public liability insurance. The community enabling team here at the city, they know what those issues are because they've been asked to support people to try and get street trees and not been able to find ways around it. So for me, it's difficult to see how there can be all this objection to debating and passing a motion tonight where there haven't been any questions asked whatsoever. It feels like just kicking it down the can, like it's the time for this tree strategy was years ago. And
Councillor
so that's
Fox,
why
please conclude.
That's why I was drawn to bring forward this motion, and why I asked ahead of writing the motion whether there was a street strategy in place already, and there wasn't one.
I'll now ask Councillor Hampton to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will just respond to some of the points made. Firstly, it is not true that we didn't ask any questions. I did ask questions of Councillor Champion, as I picked up in my original speech. That clarified to me the meaning behind some of these points, but especially given how late notice this all had to be, as we didn't receive this until quite late last week. I haven't been able to percolate that through to all my members. They need to know what they're voting on, as well as just me as the portfolio holder. Sending this to SEEP isn't intended to add bureaucracy, it's intended to add democracy. There are points people aren't clear on. There are things that I personally, and I think other members here, will need more assurance on from officers, especially around resource implications, deliverability of some of this. The point around twinning, it is a point I'm happy to explore, and that point in this motion, push comes to shove, probably isn't a red line. However, my immediate instinct was that does not meet my understanding of the precedent for a twinning committee. Not to say that it can't or shouldn't be done, but if there was something that made it clear at the outset that this is a no-go, I don't want us to be pouring resource into that. With SEEP, back to it's enhancing democracy, not intended to cause bureaucracy. I think the discussions we can have there are a bit fuller. Obviously, apart from me responding, we can all contribute once to this discussion. It's hard to have a to and fro. You've got officers and experts in that room at SEEP, so independent members, you'd have been able, you'll be able to say one thing tonight. Even if you're not members of SEEP, and I appreciate this isn't ideal, members are still entitled to come and make a comment, and as ever, we'd be happy to take any comments you have on the papers when published. What else have I written down? Yeah, Councillor Champion, there are things we agree with. We didn't seek to amend. Again, this partly goes back to how late we've had to be dealing with. There is quite a lot we would have wanted to recommend. Some of them would have been small but important changes. You mentioned some points that, yeah, we probably do agree and would agree if push comes to shove. There are others, as I say, the tree equity one, we get with the ambition, and we'd support a form of wordings around it, but it's just not realistic as it's worded at the moment that we unilaterally as a city council can achieve that. Yes, things are going to change a couple of years down the line with devolution, but we're not there yet. We have to pass something that's sound and safe as a city council. I was going to say, I know it's a bit of an elephant in the room, it's not. We've just had a big debate about it, but that is the situation we're at the moment. The reason the tree strategy is coming now in June, where we want to look at this, as Adam said, the Parks and Open Spaces strategy, the Climate Responsive Norwich programme are in a much more developed form. The biodiversity strategy has been adopted, and this follows on from them. I do think this is the right order to be doing it, and at the end of the day, it consolidates a lot of work we are already doing. And I still maintain that looking at the relatively piecemeal points in your motion alongside that tree strategy motion, it gives you the opportunity to actually integrate them into policy and strategy and carry them forward into hopefully the longer term than this likely would. So I stand by that, and I hope members can support this motion today, or the motion to send it to SEEP today.
Thank you, Councillor Hampton. We now move to the vote on whether to refer the matter directly to the Climate and Environment Emergency Executive Panel. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? The motion has been carried. As we have reached the 2-hour mark of the meeting, I need to ask if any of the remaining items can be taken as unopposed business. Does any member wish to oppose any of the remaining items? So I declare that that is the end of the meeting.